I've always loved swimming, the feeling of weightlessness, of gliding effortlessly through water. The city pool was my refuge, a place I'd go to unwind after work, slipping into the cool blue silence of the lanes. It was predictable, safe, but one evening, as I swam my usual laps, something strange happened that I still can't explain. It was nearly closing time, and I had the pool almost to myself. Just me and a single other swimmer, a guy who'd come in halfway through my session. He was in the far lane, gliding smoothly, keeping pace with me, though we never spoke or even exchanged a glance. Then, somewhere around my 10th lap, I noticed a flash of movement beneath me, a shadow that darted along the bottom of the pool. I stopped, looking down through my goggles, trying to make sense of it. It was gone as quickly as it had appeared, leaving me to wonder if it was just a trick of the light. I shook it off and kept swimming, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was down there, moving in the deep. My strokes became quicker, a little less graceful, as unease started to creep in. On my next lap, I spotted it again, the shadow moving in sync with me, just beneath the water's surface. This time it lingered, drifting with me as I swam. I stopped, treading water, and stared down. And then I saw it, another pair of eyes staring back. It wasn't the man in the far lane. He was still there, swimming his laps, oblivious. No, this figure was beneath me, suspended just a few feet below the water, its face upturned and distorted, as if it were staring up from the bottom of a glass. I kicked hard, propelling myself backward, heart pounding as I broke the surface, gasping for air. But when I looked down again, the figure was gone. The water was clear, undisturbed, as if nothing had ever been there. I climbed out of the pool, shaken. The other swimmer glanced at me, but I didn't say anything. I just grabbed my towel and hurried to the locker room, hoping to forget the strange encounter. But as I was leaving, I noticed something odd. My towel was dripping wet. I frowned, feeling a chill as I remembered I'd left it dry on the bench. And when I lifted it, a puddle had formed beneath with a vague impression of a handprint on the towel. I backed away, watching the water spread and trail off. I still swim, but avoid the pool when I'm alone or when the evening shadows stretch across the water. But sometimes, even swimming in broad daylight with a pool full of people, I occasionally would feel a faint tug from below. Probably my imaginations, but I suspect the incident will haunt me for a long time to come.
Lily didn't mind being home alone in their relatively new place of 6 months. At 18, she welcomed the rare solitude when her parents and little sister were out. It gave her a break from the constant buzz of the household. No arguing over the TV remote, no shouting over the music from her sister's room. Tonight was one of those nights, and she planned to savor it. She was curled up on the couch in the den on the second floor of their 2-story home, a cozy spot where she could spread out undisturbed. The glow of her laptop screen lit up the dim room as she half-watched a movie, half-scrolled through her feed. The usual creaks of the house and the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen downstairs blended into a familiar background. About an hour in, she heard it, a laugh. Faint, lilting, and unmistakably coming from downstairs. She paused the movie and sat up, her pulse quickening. It was so soft she almost convinced herself it was the wind, but there was no mistaking the sound. It was a child's laugh, light and playful. Her phone buzzed beside her, startling her. She grabbed it quickly, grateful for the distraction. It was her mom checking in.
Everything okay? Don't forget to lock the doors.
Lily typed a quick reply.
All good.
Setting her phone down, she leaned back into the cushions, convincing herself she'd imagined it. Minutes passed, but just as she started to relax, she heard it again. A giggle, this time louder and clearer. It drifted up from below, as if someone was standing at the bottom of the staircase. Her heart started pounding. It was the unmistakable, but she was alone. She knew as much. Trying to calm herself, she called out,
Hello. Is someone there?
She waited, feeling ridiculous as only silence reply. After a long minute, she told herself to ignore it, to go back to her movie, but curiosity tugged at her. She rose from the couch, taking cautious steps toward the staircase. She peered down, her eyes sweeping over the darkened hallway below.
Hello.
She called again, softer this time, her voice barely more than a whisper. There was no answer, no sign of movement. But just as she turned to head back to her spot on the couch, she heard a faint, sing-song whisper that sent chills down her spine.
Found you.
Lily's stomach dropped. The voice was so clear, so close. She knew it wasn't her imagination. Her pulse raced as she turned and bolted back to the couch, grabbing her phone and dialing her mom. Her mother picked up on the second ring.
Hey, honey, everything okay?
Mom,
Lily whispered urgently.
I'm hearing things. Voices from downstairs.
There was a pause. When her mom finally spoke, her tone was calm but uneasy.
Stay upstairs, Lily. Your dad and I will head back home right now. Call the police while you wait for us.
Okay.
Lily hung up with her mom, her heart pounding in her chest. There's a quality in her mom's voice that made Lily uneasy, coupled with the fact that her mom simply accepts what she just experiences without further questions. Had she known something? She fumbled with her phone, her fingers trembling as she scrolled for the police hotline. Suddenly, it slipped from her grasp. It bounced off the sofa and landed on the floor with a loud thud. Lily quickly bent forward to pick up her phone, but her foot kicks the device in the scramble and sent it skittering across the room.
No, no, no.
Lily muttered, scrambling after it. She picked up the phone, her stomach sinking as she saw the spiderweb crack radiating from the edge to the center of the screen. She tapped at it. The screen glowed briefly, then blinked off again. She tried turning it off and on. No response. The phone was dead. The current situation couldn't distract her for the fact that she had purchased this phone with her pocket money just 3 months prior. It was practically new. Lily groaned in dismay. She slid under the blanket on the couch, her eyes fixed on the bedroom door. The laughter came again, louder this time, accompanied by the sound of light footsteps moving through the house. A small voice drifted from the gap between the door and the floor.
Your turn.
Any ounce of doubt removed now. Lily trembled and stared unblinkingly at the door. A long silence. Then, without warning, the loudest crash Lily had ever heard caused her to jump out of her skin and scream. Then silence. What was that? From where? Tears were flowing freely now. Hours seemed to crawl by before her parents finally arrived. When they did, her father checked every corner of the house, finding nothing. Her mom sat beside her, rubbing her back, reassuring her it was over. Days later, her mom reveals that both her parents had a handful of weird experiences too ever since they moved in. They didn't want to scare Lily or her sister, so they kept quiet about it. Her mom never elaborates what their own encounters were like. After that night, Lily never experienced anything strange in the house again. The laughter, the whispers, their loud crash. It was as if they had never happened. But she couldn't shake the memory of that evening. The thought of being alone in the house sent a chill down her spine, and she made a quiet resolution. She would never stay home by herself again. Even years later, when she visited her parents on holidays or stopped by to house sit, Lily ensured she was never alone. The house felt normal, warm, even when it was full of life. But whenever she found herself the last one to leave, she always moved quickly, her heart racing until she stepped out the door and into the safety of the world outside.
It was a quiet Tuesday evening when the first text came through. Emily had just settled on her couch, a steaming cup of tea in one hand and her cat curled up on the other side of the cushions. She glanced at her phone, expecting a notification from her usual group chat. Instead, the screen displayed a number she didn't recognize.
Hey, is this still your number? It's been forever.
Frowning, Emily set her tea down and typed back.
Sorry, I think you have the wrong number.
A reply came almost instantly.
Oh, my bad. Thought this was James' phone.
She shrugged, setting her phone aside. Just a random mistake, nothing to think about. She shifted her focus back to the TV, scrolling through options before settling on a feel-good rom-com. Her phone buzzed again.
Actually, This is James' phone, isn't it?
Her brow furrowed. She picked up the device, staring at the screen. The tone had changed, the casual error now tinged with something unsettling. She hesitated before typing.
No, it's not. Please stop texting me.
This time, there was no immediate response. She exhaled, the tension ebbing away as she placed the phone face down on the coffee table. But 15 minutes later, another buzz broke the silence.
Sorry for the confusion. You just remind me of someone I used to know. Have a good night, Emily.
Her heart skipped a beat. Her name wasn't in her phone number or email. There was no way a stranger could have guessed it. She stared at the screen, her stomach knotting.
How do you know my name?
She typed back, her hands trembling slightly. The reply came after a long pause.
We used to meet under the willow tree at the park. You'd always laugh when I showed up late. You were so patient with me.
The text might have seemed sentimental if it weren't so deeply wrong. She hadn't been to the park in years, and she certainly didn't know anyone who matched this memory. She typed back, her irritation now mingling with fear.
You have the wrong person. Stop contacting me.
This time, her phone stayed silent. She let out a shaky breath, convincing herself it was just a bizarre coincidence or a prank. The next day passed uneventfully, and by evening, the texts were a faint memory. But just as she began to unwind for the night, her phone buzzed again.
I miss those days. I'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. under the willow tree. You remember the spot?
Her first thought was to block the number, but something stopped her. The messages weren't threatening, not exactly, but there was a strange familiarity in the way they were written, as if the sender genuinely thought he or she knew her. Against her better judgment, she typed back.
You've got the wrong person. Please stop.
She hesitated, then added.
I won't be there.
The reply came almost immediately.
I know you'll come, Emily.
The next day dragged on uneventfully, but the texts lingered in her mind. By the time the evening rolled around, curiosity had taken hold. She wasn't going to meet anyone, of course, but she decided to drive by the park and spy from a distance, just to prove to herself that it was some random prank. At 7:50 p.m., she parked across the street from the small park and sat in her car, the engine idling. The willow tree loomed in the distance, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. The park was empty, the shadows stretching long under the streetlights. Nobody was there. She turns off the engine and sat in the car for another 20 minutes. Still, nobody turns up. Relief washed over her, and she almost laughed at herself for being so paranoid. But just as she turned to leave, her phone buzzed in her hand.
I knew you'd come.
Her heart pounded as she whipped her head around. The park was empty, as far as she could see. The branches of the willow tree shifted slightly in the distance by a gentle breeze. Still no one. She didn't wait to find out what was happening. She starts the engine, threw her car into gear, and sped home, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Emily locks the doors behind her when she is safely home and makes sure everything is locked down. Her phone buzzed one final time as she sat in the kitchen, her hands trembling.
Thanks for coming. It was good to see you again.
She never did block the number, and though the text never came again, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, still knew exactly where she was.